to say good morning to Mark Lawrenson. Mark, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, I'm good, thank you. So you talking about cojones on the programme? That's a bit early.
Well, we were. Who was in the commentary box that couldn't actually say cojones and called it cojones? Remember that?
No, I don't remember.
Oh yeah, it's a clip that keeps doing the rounds on the internet. So
brilliant.
Yeah, look, let's start with Liverpool if we can. Just before half-time, one of the co-coms went, "Oh, they've had enough chances to take control of the entire tie, not just the game tonight in the first half." And you're thinking it's very hard for teams to keep going spiritually and psychologically when you've created a chance, and you're desperately trying to get back into it. And even your best players, the ones who are most reliable, aren't scoring for you.
Yeah, I needed the goal in the first 45 minutes. I mean, the chance for Salah would have been the one which... And when you think about it, normally it would just have dinked that over the goalkeeper. So whether his mind was racing a little bit or he took his eye off the ball, I'm not sure. But you won't get many better chances like that one. You get somebody like Real Madrid, most certainly. And that was probably one. And I don't know, Wijnaldum had one as well. But I think if you're going to do anything in a game like that, you nick a goal before half-time, it changes everything. Whereas Real Madrid go in at half-time and the manager goes, "Right, well done, boys, we're doing great, keep going, we might pitch a goal, etc., etc." So that's all good for them. And Liverpool, if you Klopp, what do you say? Well, come on, boys, we'll get there eventually. We're making all the chances. But you kind of know a little bit. You almost get that feeling thinking, I'm not sure that we will, or if we do, we might only get one and it might end up 2-1. So people don't kind of think too much about the psychological element in football, but with away goals and stuff, that's why it's just so good, this competition, because it makes a massive difference to the way that you approach games as players and managers.
I think the other thing is that at this stage of the competition, the absence of fans becomes far more pronounced as well, because every single mistake that a Real Madrid player made last night would have been absolutely hounded. Whereas a mistake happens, one of their mates clears it up, and Casemiro is there to put the fire out, and everything's grand. But actually, if the whole of Anfield is absolutely roaring at whoever has misplaced the pass, then he thinks about it a second time, and suddenly, they're obviously the world's best footballers, some of the greatest athletes of their generation, and yet at the same time it matters.
Well, listen, I mean, fortunately, I've been there, and what the Klopp do, they try and suck the ball in the net, basically, for want of a better description. But also a fact that just the noise when you come out onto that pitch, and obviously you never walk alone's blasting out to everybody around the stadium. And we know they're an outstanding team. Obviously, they were missing 2 or 3 players still, and I thought defensively they were very, very good. But everybody feels that pressure because certainly 1 or 2 of them, shall I say, they haven't played that many games in terms of defence for Real Madrid, and the slightest slip, and it's like the whole crowd would have been on them, and you can sort of smell blood on that particular occasion. But just wasn't to be. I thought Madrid actually played really well, and what did surprise me, they really, really pressed excellently. I thought they were very, very good, and they did always have a threat on the counter attack.
There's sometimes been a bit of confusion about how much credit we actually give Zinedine Zidane for that. How much do you give him for the last 2 legs from a Real Madrid perspective?
Loads. He's a manager. He decides the tactics. He may not necessarily transfer the players in because how these things kind of work at clubs like Madrid and Barcelona. But no, I absolutely give him lots, and he was always on the sideline. He wasn't screaming, he wasn't shouting, he was controlled. And sometimes, you do look over to your manager in those situations, and he's not like looking at you thinking, "What the hell are you doing?" It's all good, and they were very, very controlled. I would imagine it was probably one of their better away performances of the season.
Control seems to be the word about Real Madrid at the moment, that there is a sort of manic energy that we expect from Paris Saint-Germain against Manchester City in that semi-final. But maybe the way Chelsea shut the game down against Porto the other night, it's going to be set up for a fairly intriguing tie, I'd imagine, on the other side of the draw.
Well, yeah. So Ramos will be back, will he not? Varane as well. So I mean, straight away, you know, the three midfield players were just outstanding for Madrid. Casemiro and his two cohorts as well. I mean, you know, Kroos and Modric. They'll feel better. They'll feel safer because they know behind them, and the goalkeeper is outstanding. They'll straight away. You're comfortable, and you can take a few more chances. And where's the first leg? Do you know? Is it away from home?
Oh,
it's in Madrid.
Yeah, so it's away from home. So I mean, Tuchel will go there, and he'll sit in, won't he? And because he's got loads of players that he can pick who are very, very quick on the break. So I would suggest that would probably be a smash and grab kind of night for Chelsea. And then, of course, it's different at home because you don't know what the score is and the outcome from the first leg, and that kind of decides your tactics for you, exactly how you're going to play. But as I say again, I think, you know, in football for me and playing in these games, that away goal is just so good because it can, in a minute and an instant, it can change absolutely everything about the tie.
We saw a little bit of that last night with Dortmund scoring and suddenly being ahead against City on away goals. And all of the questions, certainly at half-time last night, all of the questions again about the Pep Guardiola era at Manchester City and their inability to break through this ceiling of the quarterfinals in the Champions League were right there. So in that context, how important is the second half performance and the fact that they managed to come through that tie?
Massive. It's absolutely massive. And I mean, I think they'll get through to the final. I just think it's the season for them to do it. We know they've made mistakes in the past in this particular competition, and you have got I've had the feeling that sometimes with Guardiola in this competition, he tries to be a little bit too clever. You know, he's like the really smart kid in the class who thinks he knows everything, but occasionally he doesn't. I mean, what they did against Lyon, the way they set up was just a little bit strange when he'd never done that before. But you look at them now, and you know, they've got just so many players who are. They're all just really, really high in terms of performances, nearly all of them. So we left out last night, and these guys can come on and they can all change games. That's the thing. They've got so many game changers. It's frightening. But just the way they play and I think this is really, really difficult in football at this level. It's, you know, what you should do when you're playing these games, everybody tells you start at the very, very top in terms of your energy, commitment, all those kind of things. And then, you know, if you're comfortable, you can drop off a little bit. But it's very, very difficult to start in a comfortable position and then kick on. But they can do it. And I think that's exactly what they did in the second half. Obviously, score the goals at the right times as well. And we saw, you know, the way the goals went in, that they share goals in that team. It's a very, very good side. I mean, that's the tie of the round, isn't it? So, and we know what PSG are like as well. So that'll be fun, those two legs.
Yeah, I really can't wait for the quality of the football that we're going to see over those two legs. I did want to talk to you a little bit more about where this leaves Liverpool now that they've gone out of the Champions League, because we'd Graham Souness on the show yesterday, and
sure,
I was asking just that general question: how much blame does the manager get for not changing his style when his centre back got injured? He's like, no, you can't suddenly throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is the thing that has brought you to this point. And he was very critical actually of the midfield. He kind of felt like Naby Keita's career hasn't really taken off at Liverpool. The Wijnaldum situation, it became clear fairly early on, a good while ago, that he probably wasn't sticking around. And Graham posed the question, what does that do in the dressing room? And then you've got the Henderson injury. All of a sudden, that midfield, other players have not stood up and led the team the way that he would have expected to. And I thought it was a fair point, to be honest, that...
Yeah, no, it is, all of them. And I think you'd throw Shaqiri in there because, you know, Klopp throws him on occasionally, and he's one who you don't know. I'm not saying that he can't be trusted, Shaqiri, but it's what will he give you? And he also looks like he needs to play on a regular basis. Otherwise, he can't quite get to the pace of the game. No, I'd agree with Charlie. Oh, sorry, Graham. You know him as Graham. We know him as Charlie. But yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, you know, the other thing would be as well that the most difficult thing for Liverpool has been the fact that, you know, the normal three in midfield, they push the front three on. That's been the big thing, and they push them on, whether it's with energy, whether it's with obviously lots of the ball in great positions, etc. And like any team, it is the heartbeat of the side. And while, you know, Fabinho had to go and play at the back, of course, and then Henderson had to play at the back, and all those kind of things, and you kind of knew that they just dropped off in midfield, and consequently, that's why I think the front three started to struggle, but also the fact that, and I'll still go back to this, that, I mean, how long was pre-season? Pre-season was only about 3 weeks, wasn't it? And I think, you know, winning the league last year, and you get, you know, once you win it, it's like a massive collective sigh, which is, wow, we've done it. And, you know, everyone's expanded all their energy into that. And then you do need time off, you know, 4, 5, 6 weeks. But I just think that 3 weeks for Liverpool, it's shown with the front three that they've been running on empty for quite a while. Although, of course, last night they picked it up and they played really well and looked very, very sharp.
So last night actually gives me kind of, you know, some hope that actually they will be able to get back to the level that they were at previously. The difficulty from the Premier League perspective is that what City have done over the last 18 months, essentially, since they were last competitive against Liverpool in the title race, is that they've added a really good centre-back. John Stones has got better. Phil Foden is seasoned into the team. De Bruyne has reached a kind of a global superstar level. So yeah, Liverpool need to get better than they were when they were actually winning the league if they're going to go toe-to-toe with City next season as well. How do they do that? How do they do that this summer? What do you think they need to add?
Well, the first thing is they welcome back Van Dijk and Gomez and Matip. So that's straight away, you know, 3 steps in the right direction. I think you'll look at somebody in midfield who's a little bit more creative than what they've got. I don't really see anybody leaving, although there's always that kind of undercurrent with Salah, whose agent will put something out, which basically everybody puts 2 and 2 together and makes 47, and he's going to Madrid or Barcelona or all that. I'm not sure if they can afford him anyway. But yeah, it's just that midfield kind of creativeness for me. I get what Charlie says about Wijnaldum as well, and you kind of, you know, the old pro in me kind of looks at him and think, you almost like want to leave him out, you know, because he's saying to the club, well, see you later, I'm out of here. And they'll have offered him a really, really good contract, obviously, but that's going to be, so he needs replacing. Henderson will be back. I don't think they need major surgery, but what they will need is a rest. And in many ways, and Liverpool fans won't thank me for saying this, but going out the competition is actually now a blessing in disguise. So what we got in the league, is it 7 games left?
Yeah.
So all sort of hands to the pump, have a real go at it, and then clear off. But then, of course, the other thing is, it's a flipping Euros, isn't it?
So you've got to manage the start of next season properly as well, and maybe that's about strength and depth. What about Trent and where he plays and where his future is? Because obviously big debates about the fact
right back.
100%, no questions. That's what you think?
Honestly, I can speak from experience because, you know, playing at the back and then going and playing midfield is just so completely different. Because when you play at the back, 99 times out of 100 in the games, you are facing everything. You are facing everything because you're almost, you know, you're the last step before the goalkeeper. You're playing midfield, you've got to play on the half turn, and it's different. And, you know, if you say, everyone says, oh, play him on the right side of midfield, well, he'll get picked up. You know, somebody will mark him really tight because of his qualities on the ball and his crossing. And, you know, your Wolves coming to play Anfield and you sit your left-sided midfield player on him and said, don't leave him alone. Wherever he goes, you go with him. And that is so completely different. And the thing when he plays right back, if you watch, generally, he gets the ball and he's got space to run into. So he straight away builds up his pace. He's lightning quick, as we know. And he can take people on from a running position, not from a half turn or a standing start. And I think it means it's a massive thing that I just don't see it. I think maybe eventually when he gets a few more kind of what shall we call, midfield skills, if you will, where he's played on the half turn and he can feel people in behind him and very, very close. That might be it. But no, at the moment, just stay at right back, because creatively he's as good as any right back. Well, I would say, is there a better right back in the world at the moment? I can't kind of think. I think one of you boys might know better than me, but you'd have him in your team week in, week out. And yes, he makes mistakes defensively. Does he make many mistakes defensively when Gomez is back, when Van Dijk's back, when Matip's around? No.
You mentioned the Euros this summer, Mark, and I guess that's one of the concerns that Liverpool might have, because looking at what James Milner was saying after the game last night, he said that if we had played the first leg with the same intensity, it would have been very different. And it seems that that's been a bit of a theme, that if Liverpool are missing intensity, their performance drops off. Do they need to find a different gear when that level does drop off next season? Because players are going to be tired going into the start of next season once again.
Yeah, possibly. We've just obviously spoken about recruitment, and he brings 2 or 3 different players in, which will help. I think the thing about the first leg is it was strange. Now, I don't know if that is because all of a sudden, so the 2 young centre backs are playing and doing as best as they can. But I was going to say you go to the Bernabeu, but obviously it was Alfredo Di Stefano, wasn't it? The stadium, the training stadium. But so what I'm trying to say is you go out in that game and you look at the opposition as you come out, and you do it. Everybody does it, and they say they don't. But you look at them and think, oh, wow, Kroos, oh, Modric, oh, Casemiro, oh, crikey. And there's a little bit of that. And I don't care what the manager says, that's the way that it is. And if you don't start very well against top teams, normally you struggle. And I think that's exactly what happened. And then in the end, really, if you look, they didn't have any kind of great leadership in Madrid. And they were it was a very, very average performance. They got that goal and you kind of thought, oh, hold on a minute, hang on to that. And the second leg's going to be very interesting. But it wasn't to be. I mean, when you talk about, obviously, the fact that, the rest in the summer, I think they have to have a minimum, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 weeks. Quite a few of them, I would think, that will have a lot longer than that. So I don't see energy and all those kind of things that go with energy and everything. I don't see that being a problem next year. I just think they were dead on the feet at the end of the season. They had very, very little time in terms of to turn around. And like any team after a really successful season like that, winning the league, when it's been 30 flipping years, for goodness sake, there's bound to be a knock-on effect. And that's exactly what it's been. I mean, even Salah's not been as good this season, but his goal-scoring record's excellent, isn't it? So Mane's looked a bit ordinary, which is unusual for him. Jota's been the one. And why do we think Jota's been the one? Because he probably didn't, well, not probably, he didn't have the stress of winning the league last season.
So you don't think there's a massive restructuring job that needs to be done? Get the 3 centre-backs back. How many first-team players would you like to see them buy over the summer? Or is it actually just about making sure there's depth so you can rotate players in?
Both. I mean, Wijnaldum's going, as we know, so I'd like to see them sign three top players, if possible. But of course, Champions League, and if they don't qualify for the Champions League, the players they thought they might get have got an excuse not to come. I mean, forget about the money. Everyone kind of gives these players the same money within reason, as we know. I mean, Paris Saint-Germain and all that, but will be a bit different. But generally, the money's fabulous at Liverpool. So you'd always attract players, but it is just that Champions League thing. And if you're not in it, you're giving people and players, I should say, a reason not to come to your club. And maybe they're also a little bit different because people get Klopp, don't they? And I think he's very persuasive. And, if he kind of rings you up and say, like, would you like to come and play for Liverpool? I think most of the best players in the world would come and turn up. So that might help them. But the Champions League makes all the difference for players.
It doesn't feel like we're getting to a point where Klopp is exhausted by the project or is burnt out. I know there was that kind of talk earlier in the year and how much he sleeps and all that kind of stuff, and the home record was bad and he didn't know how many they lost. But that all seems a little bit like noise. If you actually look at his demeanour when he loses or when he gets knocked out, he's incredibly angry and very pissed off with all the questions that anybody asks him. But he's been like that the whole way through. He was like that at the very start as well. Yeah,
it was like that at Dortmund, and I'm no doubt. I wouldn't really know. Well, I've read a couple of books about him at Mainz, and I think very, very, very similar. And he's also, in his career, he always seems to have 1 year where it all goes a little bit flat. But if it's 1 year in 5 or 6, that's absolutely more than acceptable. And I think he absolutely loves the job. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I don't think he'll get many better jobs. And when I say that, it's because the Americans they do not interfere with him at all, and they just kind of leave him. They just leave him alone. And obviously the chief exec kind of runs the club and, the financial side and all those kind of things. They've got the recruitment right as well now, which is I think the second most important job at any Premier League football club now, or any top football club throughout the world. And he very much does what he wants. He runs the whole show, the whole playing side, and absolutely everything. And we know that he gets a club. He got it within the first week, 2 weeks, basically. He got the whole Shankly thing, and I hate comparisons when like somebody comes through and plays in Kenny Dalglish's position. They go, "Oh, he's just like Kenny." Well, he's not, because the fellow was a genius. But and everyone said, "Oh, he's very much Shankly-like," but he is. He really seriously is. I mean, I take you back to that. I was at the game. They played West Brom, and I think they got a really late equaliser, Liverpool, to get a 2-2. And they didn't play particularly well. I think they conceded 2 goals from corners. And Klopp noticed a lot of people were leaving about 5 minutes before the end of the match, just away to his right, just in the Kop. And so at the end of the game, he took his players down to the Kop, like to kind of, wave to the crowd and applaud them and all that. And I remember that because I went to the press conference, because obviously you can't get away for an hour in the car park. And I was sitting there and someone said to him, what was all that about? You just scraped a 2-2 with West Brom. And he said, look, if I can't convince our own supporters that we can score in the 94th or 5th minute of a game at home, what's the point? And I just thought it was just a kind of really, really clever thing to do and say. And that's him. And people say, oh, he might walk away, he might do that. I don't think he will walk away. I really seriously don't think he will walk away. I don't think money's an issue with him. He signed a bumper new contract, didn't he? I don't know how long ago, and he's got years to go. And they're saying, German manager, and he boshed that off straight away, didn't he? No, not for me, because he likes the day-to-day involvement. But I think with these guys, and I think that Guardiola's got it at Manchester City, because basically 2 guys who run the club, the 2 Spanish boys, they waited for him. He was always going to be their man. And he's another one, Guardiola, who basically runs that whole football side of the club. And, they don't get dragged into meetings about this, meetings about that. It's just the football side. And you don't get a better job, arguably, than these two have got. You might go to a place like PSG or something where you get more money, but it's for them for those people who've already managed, it's completely different. You just want to be in control of it. You don't want some bloke turn up, chief exec, and say, oh, we need to look at this, and he has none of that. Absolutely none of it. So turns up and does his training and sorts the boys out, and it's happy days.
Yeah, look, that makes perfect sense. And I think the mistake that maybe we've made as analysts is like, oh, he has a cycle. The cycle is a certain period of time. But Dortmund is a completely different scenario from Liverpool. With Dortmund, you always had Bayern Munich there. You could overachieve for a short period of time. You could win a league once every 10 years.
Do you not think we've got Man City there, though?
Well, you do. But, I mean, I think the gap between Dortmund and Bayern is less than the gap between Liverpool and City, and probably because of Klopp's genius.
Could Could you see Man City signing a Liverpool star, for example, in a way that Bayern Munich would sign a Dortmund star, Mark?
No. Well, they do what they want, don't they, at Munich? And they obviously let players run the contracts down, but tell them three years in advance. But, he obviously had to deal with that at Dortmund with losing some of his better players. But no, I get what you mean, but I just don't, I think it's like who coaches the coach? It's a little bit like that. And, when we talk about the players being tired and, this thing and one thing and another, but I think also it's like he'll be tired. He'll be ready for a rest. And he'll be ready for his holidays. So I think he'll go away, do whatever he wants, and he'll be back and start the season. He'll have them 3 sessions a day. Well, I bet they look forward to that. Not
well. I hope you're right, because it's our lives as football fans is definitely better having Klopp be his massive giant persona and having Liverpool back at this level and being able to talk about them as potential Champions League winners. Do you know what? The other
thing which people don't get with him, because they don't really know him, but also he takes the mickey out of himself, and I think people like that. He doesn't take himself too seriously, and there's always kind of a laugh and a joke. I'm fortunate enough to I've not been to the new training ground because it's just been COVID since I've been in there, but just go to Melwood and do some stuff for LFC TV, and you could be interviewing one of the players, and he comes and joins in. Now, I don't think you'd see Guardiola doing that, would you? But he comes and joins in because then he wants to take the mick out the players, like whatever he's been saying, and say, "What's he been saying to you?" And he's kind of a different breed, but I think the thing with the players with Klopp is, he really is their friend, right, as well as the manager. And I think this is the key to it. He's not their best friend, and I think that's why it works.
Just that he's got that hybrid, right? Look, today is obviously the anniversary of Hillsborough, and I didn't want to let this conversation about Liverpool pass without marking it, because it is the other thing that Klopp has understood, that whole history of the club. The managers, even his treatment and relationship with Sean Cox after that happened, but he totally understood Hillsborough and the impact that it's had on the club, and he has always made it just a part of the general conversation as well.
Yeah. And he's not frightened to talk about it, but he absolutely, as we said about, getting everything, he absolutely, totally gets it. I mean, we used to go every year, and obviously to the memorial, but over the 21 years, that's obviously stopped now. But it's still, I think, it's still very uppermost with the football club. The only strange thing I think, and it's nothing to do with Hillsborough, it's to do with Heysel. And Heisel's never ever mentioned. Very, very, very rarely is Heysel ever mentioned. For whatever reason, it's almost like it's kind of been glossed over a little bit, which of course it should never, ever, ever be. But it doesn't get a mention. And as ex-players, and I mean, there's an awful lot of us live very, very close together in Southport and everything. And when we see each other and we go and have a beer and stuff, we don't talk about it. Nobody talks about Heysel. Absolutely nobody. And it's just one of those, I find it really, really strange. I really do.
Is it just a sense of shame?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that. I think there is definitely a bit of that, but there is, and I can't exonerate the football club completely, but that day, well, before that day, UEFA decided to obviously make it 2/3 that end, 2/3 Liverpool, 1/3 whoever. But basically, in fairness to the Juventus supporters, they paid to go in there, and I think, I'm pretty sure Peter Robinson, who was like the chief exec, general manager of the football club at the time, complained to UEFA about that. Why would you possibly do that? And I think there is some paperwork somewhere, kept a copy of what he said to UEFA. But then, so you can't exonerate what happened. I think there were different factions involved, and eventually, over the course of time, you get the real story. But yeah, it's just very, very strange. I mean, as people know, I spent a night in the hospital with some of the dead and the dying because I dislocated my shoulder within about 30 seconds of the flipping game starting, and I was obviously had to go to the hospital in an ambulance and all that kind of stuff. But it's just really, really odd that it never ever, there's never been that, discussion about Heysel, and it is a little bit like, and it feels as though it's a bit like a dirty secret in many ways.
I didn't know that you'd spent the evening in the hospital with the dead.
Oh yeah, listen, well, I mean, so I was struggling to play. Then they arranged the game for me 3 weeks before, or 2 weeks before, and so to see if I was fit enough. So, and I think me and Craig Johnson, he had an ankle injury, and we both played against Chester or something, and we were fine. So, but I fell down tackling Platini within about, I think it was a minute and 10 seconds or something. I knew straight away my shoulder dislocated again. I think, SHIT, went off, and the doctor, the doc, God love him, we had 2 doctors, brothers, 2 Irish guys, and he was trying to put my arm back in, and apparently what they say is if within a couple of minutes, sometimes the arm will click back in, the shoulder will click back in, but it didn't, and then he had me swinging this milk carton. Honestly, I mean, when my book comes out, you can read it. But so the next thing was I went in an ambulance. The game's going on. I'm going to the hospital. And it wasn't like a normal ambulance that you would see now. It's like a kind of extended vehicle ambulance, low and everything like that. And I got in via the boot, and they kind of put me in backwards. It sounds stupid. And I was lying on a stretcher, but it was attached to this kind of big metal piece of metal thing, which obviously that extended to the boot. So when I got to the hospital, they reversed in. And it was a bit like, if you go on the motorway and you see these loading bays for Tesco's and Walmart and all those kind of things. Honestly, it was just like this. These shutters came up, right? And something came out of the building, and it connected to what I was lying on. And basically, and they just said, don't move. You haven't got to get up. Just stay there. Don't move anything. And basically, I was on like a mini conveyor belt, and it was straight into the operating theatre. They had my records and all that kind of stuff, and the guy was all gowned up, and he said, right, okay, dislocated shoulder. He said, we'll have to knock you out, obviously, and then, put it back in, and you'll be fine. I'm in my kit, I've got my boots on, the whole shebang, and I'm with the doc. And I woke up, and this is the frightening thing for me, I woke up, and it was never great when I have an operation with the stuff they knock you out with and they put you. And I'm always like, I felt rough. Anyway, I woke up, and I still all my kit on, obviously my boots off, and I looked around, and I was in a ward. There was 24 beds, and I was the only person in there. And there was a guy from the army with this biggest machine gun you've ever seen in your life sat at the bottom of my bed. And I looked at him, and obviously I'm looking like SH1T, as I said, and I look at him, and he didn't speak any English. He just went, as in, just stay there. And he went and got the nurse and stuff like that. Oh, it was like unbelievable, yeah, what we went through.
Did you have any idea of the disaster that had unfolded before you got to the hospital?
Well, no, we knew. What happened was, we got to, when we got to the game, we always got there unbelievably early. Listen, when on the way to the game, Juventus fans and Liverpool fans were playing on this piece of grass, like a little mini park thing, playing against each other at football. And you're thinking, it was a lovely warm night. You're thinking, this is all good. I mean, you had no idea what hell was about to happen and stuff. So, and before the game, we went out, and then all of a sudden we heard this commotion, and our dressing room was very, very close to where that end and where the wall collapsed. And then obviously that people realised that there's a major, major problem, and they stopped us going out. And of course, they're now saying, that the game's being delayed, the walls collapsed and all that. And of course, it's like Chinese whispers. And then you're hearing people going, oh, there's like, there's 5 dead, there's 10 dead and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going, crikey. And then the chief of police for Brussels came into the dressing room, and he said this game goes ahead, and we went. There's a bunch of players. We went, no, we don't want to play. He said, no. He said it's a safety issue. He said and I've spoken to Juventus, and he said it's a safety issue because if all of a sudden I let everybody go with what's happened, he said I cannot be responsible for what happened. He said so we're playing, which was just weird. And I remember coming out to obviously and to line up and everything, and just thinking it's absolutely ridiculous in many, many ways. And if you look, I've never ever seen a second of that game ever. I didn't even have a look at the pen, which the boys said it wasn't a pen from the goal. But I've never ever looked at a second of it because you just think how ridiculous was that. And I remember my mum would never go to big games ever because she'd be there with her hands in front of her eyes and stuff like that. And my stepfather went with a friend of his, and when I spoke to him later on that night, he said because they had VIP tickets, obviously, because from the players, etc. That he said we walked past. He said it was like a little avenue thing, and he said it was just black body bags, and of course, they were thinking because of the time, it was the IRA, it was this, it was whatever. It was just completely crazy.
In the hospital, when you woke up, did they bring the people from the stadium into the same room as you?
No, I'll tell you what happened. The nurse came in, spoke fab English and stuff, and she said, "How you feeling?" I'm all strapped up and everything like that. And I said, "Yeah, fine, because obviously, the effects were still with me." And I think she said, I'm pretty sure she made me a cup of tea and a piece of toast, which you do. But in the morning, the surgeon who sorted my shoulder out came in. He actually said to me, I can operate on this. And I said, it was already decided at Liverpool that when I got back to England, I was going to have an operation. It's called putty plate, where you oversew one of the muscles and stuff because it kept coming out. He said, I can do it for you. I could do it here. And I said, no. I said, I'm sorry, but I'll have to go home and stuff. And he said, there's one or two of the press want to speak to you. And probably a wrong decision. I said, yeah, okay. Well, the next thing is the world and his wife were in there. And of course, there was loads of Italians, and they were all, very, very challenging. And I was like, well, I'm like this, lying in the bed, half kind of awake and half not, asking me all these questions. And I couldn't really answer them because they're just saying about, stuff like, did you know people had died? And that, well, we were told people had died, but it wasn't, Liverpool officials hadn't come in and told us, but we were told it had died and all those kind of things. And and in the end, the guy, the surgeon sort of said, look, he said, we need to get you out of here. And I said, well, yeah, great. Go back to the hotel. And then we were flying home. But I had my kit. I had no civvies, no civilian clothes. So they said, all right, okay, we'll get in touch with the club. Anyway, Roy Evans turned up with my missus at the time, Vanessa. And they turned up, and he brought me a tracksuit. He brought me a Liverpool tracksuit, and I looked at him. You can imagine what I said, can't you? He was a friend of mine as well as being one of the coaches ever. Just a great lad. And I said, why didn't you just bring me effing clothes? And he went, well, we just wanted to come and get you out as soon as possible. And he said, anyway, he says, tell you what we'll do. We'll reverse the tracksuit. We'll turn it inside out. So anyway, they sneaked me out of one of the lifts, one of the service lifts, and obviously got back to the hotel, and then we just went to the airport. But at the airport, we were spat on and everything. It just wasn't nice. The only thing was that they got us out of there in terms of the flight ASAP, but they were spitting on us, and they wrote on, all the skips that have all your kit, your dirty kit, your boots in, all that kind of stuff, and they wrote all kinds of stuff on them, obviously, about being killers and one thing and another. So, but that story's never ever really, as I said, it's never ever really come out at all, which I find really strange.
Yeah, I guess it's always Every civilization finds it difficult to address their own mistakes and
misdemeanors.
But definitely, it's worth having these conversations and excavating these memories and making sure that they are recorded. And look, thanks very much for being so honest with it, because obviously, I presume it's difficult enough for you to revisit that as well.
No, it's not. It's obviously time kind of doesn't heal completely. I mean, I don't get upset about it at all. I just really do think it's very, very strange that, and absolutely quite rightly, 100%. We always talk about Hillsborough and long may we do and everything, but we just do not ever talk about Heysel ever. I just find that really, really strange, especially now. The world that we live in. You'd think we talk about it more. I think someone's trying to make a documentary. In fact, I know they're trying to make a documentary because I got an email from the club the other week if I wanted to speak to someone. And to be honest with you, I've never replied. And I don't know why I've not replied. I'm just one of them, probably because I'm just lazy and sat on my arse and thinking, nah, I can't be bothered.
I think you should. I mean, I know.
Yeah, I do. I probably will. So, yeah.
Especially that story is amazing, and I'm sure there's loads of footage of all of that stuff too that would.
Oh, there's some, there's some unbelievably stories that, I mean, I could tell you a story, not now's a probable time, but about a Juventus family. I think it was granddad, dad, uncle, and stuff, and they lost one of theirs, and it's just like, wow, it's just frightening.
Mark, always great talking to you. Thanks a million for making the time for us this morning.
Pleasure.